The passionate leader. Because leadership without passion is just a title.
Meeting. We got a collapse in the garage. Get the squad back living in here. We got an IV gone to a firefighter. It's on island urgent. Transmit a second aloft.
Ask yourself this. When two 9-year-old girls lose their daddy to his battle with mental health illness, who carries the wreckage? How many questions go unanswered? How many scars never heal? And how do those daughters ever learn to live with the void his absence leaves behind? For Shauni and Siarra, that question isn't abstract. It's their reality. At just 9 years old, they lost their daddy to suicide. It could have broken them. Instead, they found a way to rise from it, to turn pain into purpose, and carve lives built on resilience, service, and strength. Shauni is a registered medical assistant, an EMT, and a firefighter lieutenant who brings compassion to every patient and strength to every call. Her path in her fire service began at 19 when she watched her aunt's house burn down. That moment sparked a calling, and on her 18th birthday, she turned that calling into a commitment. Since then, she's earned her firefighter 1 and 2 certifications, graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree in fire administration and fire investigation, and built a reputation on service and leadership. Beyond the badge and scrubs, she's a proud wife, a bonus mom, an Irish dancer, and someone deeply passionate about making the fire service stronger for the next generation. Her twin sister, Siarra, brings her own fire to the table. A nurse since 2020, an EMT, a firefighter, and a mom, Siarra blends toughness with authenticity. Her journey into the fire service started with a playful competition with her sister, but quickly became a mission of its own. She helped open a women's health clinic and train the staff, proving that her leadership is not just about titles, but a responsibility. She is outspoken on issues many remain shy from addiction, suicide prevention, PTSD, and she faces the hardest days with grit, humor, and unwavering love for her kids, who proudly tell everyone when they listen, "My mom helps people, and I want to be like her." Together, Shauni and Siarra are proof that tragedy can either crush you or forge you into something stronger. They don't just wear uniforms and hold titles. They embody resilience, compassion, and courage to turn unimaginable loss into a drive to help others. Today, during Suicide Prevention Month, we shine the light on their story. It's not just about survival, it's about leadership, service, and what it truly means to rise from the darkest places and leave the world better than you found it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, twin sisters, Shauni and Siarra. Good evening. For those of you in the audience and listeners that are listening in their cars, Shauni is my wife, Siarra is my stepsister, and twin sisters who are likely going to get confused.
Sister-in-law, not stepsister.
I said what I said.
From Pennsylvania.
I will give you the relation to what you deserve. So they are with us today to discuss what it is like to be somebody who was left behind after somebody was taken their life. We have some hard questions to go over, but it is important to go through this, especially during this month and every month for that matter, to discuss what it is like to live when a void is left behind somebody as close as a father leaves behind. Is there anything in your bios that you guys want to add or anything that you want to correct that I may have got wrong aside from you're my sister-in-law?
I don't think so. I think you did good. As far as mine, I think you said I was 19 when my aunt's house burned down. I was 17, and then I joined when I was 18. But
Perfect. All right, so let's get right to it. Both of you are in the fire service and are obviously out to help people. Right before I even get into the hard-hitting questions, do you feel that there is a direct connection between loss at the young age of 9 and where you are now, or is it just something based upon other aspects in your lives? I wanted you guys to help others.
go ahead. Okay. So there's definitely there are actually studies on links to like early childhood trauma and first responders. So I think that kind of helped, but also just stemming from the I want to help people never be in a place that I was, or if I come across a scene where somebody's going to be where I am, what can I say that maybe not lessens the blow, but maybe is something to think about for years to come that helps the situation instead of it being such a harsh reality. I know, like, my side of it, I remember when we were told, and it was very cold, and I think it was just because, like, it was very fresh and no one really knew how to react, so it was very much like, "Your daddy's dead." It wasn't like a soft introduction to it. It was, "I'm sorry, but your dad's dead," and then we went upstairs to our rooms, and I remember asking Shawnee, like, "Who did they just say died?" Like, I think it's just more so of like a, I want to be there, like Shawnee said, to soften the blow, not so much like completely take it away, but also not be cold and uniform.
Perfect. So I think maybe moving forward, why don't we plan on so that so the listeners don't get confused, because I am able now through years of being in the as part of our family, I can tell you guys apart obviously in looks, but sometimes even on the phone it confuses me. So to our listeners who are not able to watch on a recording, the first answer after my questions we'll give to Shawnee, and then Sierra can finish up. Are you drinking an alcoholic beverage, by the way, young lady?
I am not, I have iced tea.
I said shit in a wine glass. This is how we cope, guys. All right.
I'm a fancy bitch.
So, Sierra, you kind of hit on it, but we'll it really is actually the first question. So, do you remember the first time, actually similar, do you remember the first time that you had to actually tell somebody that your daddy died, and what did it feel like coming out of your mouth?
For sure. So we were very young. So anytime you're, missing school for days at a time at that age, your friends don't really they don't think somebody died. They just are like, "Oh, did you go on vacation? Did you go have some family time?" So coming back from that, we had a teacher who when he would do the attendance, he would say, so our last name was Litzinger. So he instead of, saying Shawnee and Sierra, it was the Litzinger twins. And then we would say here. And I remember everybody looking at us and asking why we hadn't been there. And we then would say, my daddy died. I had to go to his funeral. And at that age, I don't even really remember anybody having anything other than just okay, because it was just such an unheard of thing at that age. So
Hmm.
nobody really knew how to nobody would send condolences. Obviously, our teachers, looked at us a little bit softer, gave us a little extra pat on the back, but our peers did. We were 9 years old. We were in 4th grade. So, I remember I didn't really tell anyone because it was always like Shawnee would at that point, Shawnee was the more outspoken one. So she like people would ask, where are we? And like she said, like our friends didn't really like capture it at all. But I remember there was one day that we were in music class and I don't know what song it was that triggered me, but she ended up sending me to the guidance counselor because I was sitting there crying over whatever song it was. Again, I don't really remember that part, but I went into the guidance counselor's office and I remember her saying, "What's wrong?" And I just kinda started blubbering like an idiot, and I don't even think she necessarily knew what I was saying, she just knew I was crying.
I like it. How long were you guys out of school? Was it just long enough for services, or did you guys have a little bit of extra time to kind of cope and get along, or to move along with it?
I don't really remember, but I don't think that
I
we
think
took extra time off.
yeah, I think it was really only, like, the day after maybe, and then, like, I think the funeral and everything was a few days after since it had to be closed casket. So I think it was, like, after the autopsy and everything, so it was a few days later, but we went back to school and then we're out.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And at that
Oh,
point,
go ahead.
we had already gone through our uncle had passed a year before. So he had passed my uncle passed in October of 2004, and then my daddy or our daddy died November of 2005. So we kind of just equated it to it's going to be like Uncle Mike's, where we missed school for a few days. And I don't think we really even at that age grasped the whole concept of everything at that point.
Gotcha. Um, so jumping around a little bit let's flash forward back now. So we're on fire scenes now, or when you're helping a patient, in the doctor's office or whatever the case is. When you're on a call as a firefighter or as a nurse and you see another family in crisis, does it kind of take you back to where you were when you were 9 years old?
It makes me want to be who I wanted to be there. It doesn't necessarily take me back, but it does put me in that mindset of what did I want to hear that maybe I either didn't or I don't remember hearing or it wasn't thought to be said. Um, so I definitely try to think of things a little more on the family aspect of things, which can make those scenes harder because when you're on a fire scene or in a medical facility and you have these hard calls, you want to have that just shut off. This isn't a human that I know. So we're just going to go through the motions and whatever happens, happens. Um, it makes it harder to have that shut off because I want to have emotion to then give to the family.
See, I think I'm kind of the opposite because it's not that I'm trying to hear like what I wanted to hear. It's I'm trying to get rid of what we did hear and we didn't want to hear because there was a lot of negativity based around the circumstances that everything happened. So there were definitely a lot of people with like big opinions for 9-year-olds and we
Right.
didn't grasp it. So it's hard like if so I don't get to make very many fire calls because of the kids, but, like, especially in that sense, it's hard to try to, like, take the kiddo away from the situation and try to be like, "Listen, I know you want to be with the adults. I know you want to listen to everything happening, but you can't right now, and I know it's hard, but you'll thank me in the future even though you don't necessarily know it now."
No, I love it. Um, Knowing some of the background, and you kind of hit on it a little bit about some of the negative stigma. We'll toss that at the end, and if you girls want to unpack that, we can, and if not, we do not have to. All right. So here's one, and I guess probably a disclaimer I should have started off at the very beginning is I have never once talked to Shawnee about this or Sierra. So for those of us that are listening, you guys are hearing it for the first time that I have. So there could be some pretty big emotions that come from this. In fact, it wasn't until we were preparing for the show last night that I actually asked her what she says when she comes down to visit when she's at the gravesite. So, um, what is one memory of him that still cuts the deepest?
I think for me, it's just that so Sierra touched on it. There were some big emotions based on situations about his passing. I'll go a little bit further into that. So he previously had an addiction to heroin. So he struggled with that immensely. It was, be clean, go back off the bandwagon, be clean, go back off. So I think even through all that, the biggest thing that sticks out to me is that he just was always a great dad. Like we never knew most of his legal troubles until we were in our teen years and we Googled his name because we were bored one night at a sleepover. So, we we didn't realize that we had supervised visits. We just thought we went over with our Grammy and hung out, and but he always had SpaghettiOs for us. He always had movies for us to watch, and he was always, so willing and patient with us. I remember he had, like, 2 inches of hair, and the one night we spent literally 45 minutes with cups of water trying to spike his hair into a mohawk because we were convinced that if we had enough water, it would actually stay. Yeah, and, like, she's not even kidding. It was straight, like, buzz cut. It was standing straight up on its own. There was no manipulation at all to that. Um, but yeah, I kind of agree because, like, listening back now, like, my mom has started opening up to us a lot more about, like, the situation and what happened and everything like that, and I'm not saying I agree with how it was handled, but my stepmom gave me a folder of paperwork that my stepdad had kept from court. And a lot of the paperwork, I don't remember that he never got us for 2 months. I didn't remember that we were in the hospital and no one could find him. Like, a lot of the negative stuff that everyone says and everyone remembers, they all did an immensely wonderful job at hiding all of that from us.
Do you girls think that it would have been a different circumstance if you were a little bit older?
100%.
Yeah.
I
Um,
I
Go
not
ahead.
necessarily as far as I think that our support system in life would have still gone to the lengths that they went to keep us from it as much as they could, but her and I Sierra and I were also very sneaky, very smart kids, so we knew how to find our information if we wanted to find it.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Um, if you could sit across the table from him right now and he could see the impact of his absence on you, what would you tell him? I
That
thought you weren't gonna cry.
um, I would probably tell them that things get better, like, just keep trying. Um, I'm not making this a political, medical, any type of
Yeah.
statement. The medical treatment that he received was not what he needed. He needed more than what he could be given, and I think that if he could have maybe gotten better help sooner, this would be a different conversation. But we also don't want to play the what if game. So if he were here, I would tell him to stick around and see the what ifs, but who's to say that it wouldn't have happened a different way regardless?
So mine's a little bit different. Mine's a little more angry because we are currently the same age that he was when it happened. And I currently have an 8-year-old daughter. And to me, I could never ever do anything that would put her through emotional distress, that would cause her any trauma. Like, obviously, we're parents, we're all going to cause some sort of trauma at some point in life, whether we mean to or not. But like to intentionally, I know that's not his last thought, and I know his last thought was definitely not like, "Oh, this is gonna traumatize the girls," but okay, here we are. I definitely don't see why we weren't enough to stick around, and I know that's very selfish, and I know that's not a card you would play with someone that is thinking like that because they don't think rationally either.
No, but I feel it is a very valid question. I certainly see where you're coming kind of from with that. Do so, Shawnee, you kind of hit on it with the medical stuff. Do you think that between then and now there have been enough advancements in that particular realm? And if not, how can we make it better?
I personally, for again, his addiction was heroin. Um, Addiction recovery services have definitely improved since then. I mean, again, we were 9. I wasn't working in the field at that point. I don't know what the standard of care was, but I know now I work in a family medicine practice. We do see a lot of people with addiction, mental health, things like that. The options have become better. So I think it's more of now a um availability type of thing where you have, 3 facilities, but only 2 of them have openings. One of them has treatment for addiction, but it's only for these certain types of addiction and these criteria that they meet. So just the availability.
See, I they have definitely improved since then, I will say that, but the stigma around receiving help has not, and especially, like, in the area I'm literally 3 houses down from where it happened. So, like, in this area, there is a lot of stigma, and there is a lot of negativity when someone says, "I need help. I don't wanna keep doing this. I don't wanna do this," and it's, "Well, then just stop." There's no, "Let me give you resources. Let me see if this place has this type of therapy. Let's see why you're addicted to this, not that you are addicted to this."
So, being in the medical field, I'm sure you both have probably heard at least a coworker or somebody in the field refer to it. Um, how do you handle if somebody, even in the fire service, actually, the loss of compassion to those who struggle with addiction? How does or doesn't that not affect you in how you operate either on the fire ground or in your medical careers?
I feel that in the medical field, it is for every time I've heard it, it can be more PC than the fire service. Fire service is, oh, we just picked up Jimmy 3 days ago. We narcaned him. Now he's back doing his own shit. Like, next time, let's just let him die. Um, it's burnout, and it's that firefighters' own mental health speaking, and maybe burnout, and maybe it triggers something in them that their grief response is just anger. Um, but we can't forget that we literally signed up for this. We signed up for the 2 a.m. smoke alarm, change the batteries. We signed up for the, 4-day-old stubbed toe, but I don't have transportation to the hospital, so can you take me? Yeah, it wears you down, it wears you thin, it makes you tick, but you are doing this for your community, and if you no longer want to do this for the community, then get the hell out because it's not worth adding to someone's mental burden to get your point across.
That was very passionate leader-esque of you, Mrs. Passionate Leader. I do appreciate that mindset.
I completely agree with her on that point, and, like, coming from more medical side of it, because again, she runs more calls than I do, but I work in a hospital. So, like, more medical side of this, it is very frustrating when we get Joe from the street for the 7th time in a year coming in for the same problem. He didn't do anything outpatient. He didn't even reach out to any of the resources that we gave him, but EMS found him slumped over in his car in the Giant Eagle parking lot. Like, it is very, very hard to stay compassionate. But again, like Shawnee said, we all signed up for this and we know that people can be dumb. Like, and it's not that they're being dumb, it's a legitimate chemical breakdown in your brain that says, "I need this so I can feel this." And they try to chase that so they are happy or they don't have pain or their PTSD calms down or whatever it may be that they're chasing that substance. It's just hard to be really compassionate when they aren't willing to help themselves but they're struggling with helping.
All right. A follow-up on that. How do you two fight and combat your own internal compassion fatigue?
So I have a story of the other day. Patient came in. I was looking just through her medical history because it sounded like she had a lot going on. So we just try to kind of scrub to look for, like, is this truly an acute concern or is this an acute stressor of a chronic concern? That's another soapbox I'll get on at a later date. um, and in looking through her medical records, I saw that she had a premature labor for her child because she had used heroin that morning, um, on the labor notes, not the morning that she was coming to us. On the labor notes, she had used heroin that morning and then the baby stopped kicking. So, emergency C section, baby born in withdrawal. You see things like that and you're like, how are you allowed to have kids? But you don't know what led her to those choices. You don't know if, she's, again, mental health is such a huge thing in connection with substance use disorder. So you don't know what demons she's fighting. And anything that you are thinking, she has probably thought 10 times worse things about herself after seeing the child in the condition that he was after birth. And this patient did um, reach out for help. And because of the availability in the area, just unfortunately has fallen through the cracks. So that patient, chose to live with their mother because they knew that at least the child would be taken care of when she couldn't take care of herself.
All right.
That I'm trying to think of something that, like, won't break HIPAA because, like, same same type of situation where, like, I work OBGYN. So there are a lot of moms that'll come in active drug abuse, um, active alcohol use, just active self-harm, whatever. Even the girls who will still sit and scald their bodies in a shower because that's their form of self-harm. That's an addiction because it releases the pain, it releases the stress. And it's so hard in the OBGYN world, at least, to, especially like having children and seeing like how you feel when you're pregnant and feeling the baby kicks and all that. And I know not everyone's lucky enough to feel that. I know. But like myself being able to feel that and then, like, realizing that people are risking early labors or miscarriages or, like, permanently brain damaging their child because they want to feel better is just shit on our healthcare system's part that we can't figure it out to get them the help that they need before they hurt an infant.
All right, everybody, like we do every week, it's time for a quick par check. Kids forced to be strong before they're ready, rage left behind in silence, and grief that keeps showing up in the smallest memories. That's where we stand at the end of part one. Check back for part two because this conversation doesn't stop here. Next, we're digging into the fight to survive when the world doesn't hand you a map, the ways you learn to keep moving, even when the weight wants to pin you down, and what it really takes to build a life after loss. If something in this episode struck, please make sure that you share it, you like the page, and you follow. Be the leader that you know you wanted to be when you were younger. And as always, lead with passion, serve with humility, and leave no room for bottom feeders. Until next time, guys, stay safe.